Alright, my name is Nick Conoan, and the book I'm presenting to you is called Ending Aging, The Rejuvenation Breakthroughs That Could Reverse Human Aging in Our Lifetime by Aubrey and Michael Ray. So what does everyone in this room have in common with this very ugly tree? First of all, I might want to qualify that statement by saying it's not just an ugly tree, it happens to be one of the world's oldest trees, aptly named Methuselah. So if you were to ask Aubrey that question, his answer would most certainly be longevity, where he believes that at just under 4,800 years old, humans can at one day achieve a lifespan similar to that of this tree, and in fact, indefinite lifespan. So the methodologies he believes that are necessary to achieve this, and also his argument for why this, if this is desirable, if it is feasible, and why the public should fund this, is the main premise behind the book, Ending Aging. So taking a closer look at Aubrey he was born on April 20th, 1963 in Cambridge. He earned his bachelor's in computer science from 1985. He was awarded a PhD in the year 2000 for a book he wrote on the mitochondrial theory of aging. He is currently a fellow of the Gerontological Society of America, the American Aging Association, and the Institute for Ethics and Emerging Technologies. He has also co-founded the Methuselah Foundation, with no relation to that tree, and also the SENS Foundation in 2009. But the most important thing that the reader needs to know about Aubrey is the fact that in the field of biomedical gerontology, he has been self-taught. As I mentioned, he was awarded his PhD for a book he had written, and not by going through your standard academic rigors of a PhD program. Needless to say, this actually hurts his credibility in the scientific community. Also, he has an epic beard. So, how does propose we end aging? He has a theory, or rather a group of theories, called SENS, which stands for Strategies for Engineering Negligible Senescence. He opens the book by explaining how this came to him as a eureka moment one night, and how this theory is more of what he calls an engineering approach, where he takes damage that accumulates in your cells as we age, and he removes it before it becomes a pathology, much like a mechanic would restore a vintage car. So he goes on to talk about the different types of damage, his solution to each of those, and this is the topic for the middle and longest section of the book. It's very long. But before he gets to that, he discusses what he calls the pro-aging trance. In other words, this is just most people's acceptance of the fact that death is a natural part of life. He claims that this makes psychological sense because since we feel death is inevitable, it makes no sense to worry about how to defeat it. However, he believes that this pro-aging trance is standing in the way of his anti-aging research actually reaching the clinic. And he also feels that he provides enough evidence in the first part of his book to convince the reader that they should abandon their pro-aging trance. And at this point, I happen to disagree with the author because I feel he glosses over a lot of ethical and practical issues, and I personally was not convinced that ending aging is what we should be striving for. So moving on to part 2, he starts discussing all the different types of damage and their solutions. The first type of damage he mentions is mutations in the DNA of our mitochondria, which leads to dysfunctional mitochondria that produce a lot of free radicals, which are very bad for you. His solution to this is to actually take the DNA from the mitochondria and engineer a way to get it into the cell's nucleus. These two chapters that he uses to explain this are very long and rather detailed, and they get really deep into the theory of mitochondrial aging, and so it's rather difficult to get through unless you're a biomedical gerontologist. So the next type of damage he mentions is junk that accumulates in the cell as we age. His solution to this problem is microbes in the soil that can actually digest this type of cellular junk, taking the proteins that they use to do this and actually incorporating them into our own cellular recycling units, which are called lysozymes. In the next chapter, he describes junk that accumulates outside of the cell, with an example of the beta-amyloid protein, which I'm sure most of you have heard is the cause behind Alzheimer's disease. And his solution for this is to take basically a vaccine so that the immune cells can target this beta amyloid and destroy it. The next type of damage he mentions is called advanced glycation end products, or AGEs. Basically, all this is just a protein that has been modified with a sugar and thus loses its function. So fixing this is quite simple. There are drugs out there that will target these damaged proteins and clear them from the body. However, in this chapter, he gets into the stories of these drug developments, and I feel it really bogs down the reader and makes it a hard chapter to get through. Next, he has what he calls cellular zombies, which are just cells that have lost their ability to function, but also their ability to die and be cleared properly. And he gives 3 examples of these. T cells, which are meant to deal with the chronic herpes virus, adipose tissue, which is just excess body fat, and senescent cells. His solution to these is a drug type that is actually called a dendrimer, which is it's just this core molecule that you can attach all these other targeting molecules to, and also a drug that will kill the cell of interest. So it's very specific and very effective. This chapter gets extremely technical. He starts talking about a lot of facets of the immune system, and I feel that anyone besides immunologists would have trouble getting through this chapter. So the next type of damage is when populations of cells die faster than they are generated. He simply suggests using embryonic stem cells to supplement these populations. And this is where the book takes a very controversial turn because, as you know, embryonic stem cell research is very hotly debated. And the argument he provides is, I feel, too short and also just disregards the opponents too quickly to be effective. So the final type of damage we have to overcome is cancer. And his solution to cancer is to actually take a gene we have called telomerase and just remove it from all of our cells. Since telomerase actually has function in many cells, this could have unforeseen and very bad repercussions that he has not considered. Also, there's a very unappealing therapy if he were to do this, in that you have to basically take embryonic stem cells and inject them into your bone marrow, your lungs, and your gut to regenerate populations of cells that would be damaged by this. And not only is that invasive and painful, but also it requires the use of embryonic stem cells, which are not currently accepted. So he also ends this chapter with an unsettling statement about fertility. He says, if having children is still a priority in a post-rejuvenation world. And to me, this just painted a picture of a world without children, and that left a bad taste in my mouth as he moved into the 3rd section, which is basically his fundraising pitch. He feels that the war on aging will be conquered when we finally take middle-aged mice and extend their lifespan significantly, because this will show that his techniques actually do work and are plausible. The first scientist who does this will be awarded the M Prize, which is a $160,000 cash prize raised by his Methuselah Foundation and later the SENS Foundation. And this is where creative destruction works into this book. SENS theory basically exemplifies creative destruction because it's a completely new approach to an age-old problem that is aging. And if it is successful, it will most likely replace the way we feel about, or the way we think about and treat aging, and also medicine in general. Also, if it is successful, it is likely to improve the quality of life. And it is the breakthrough innovation that will be sustained by later incremental innovations, which is a theory he calls longevity escape velocity, or LEV. Also, you can tell it's creative destruction because it's not readily accepted by his peers, hence the need to write a book that is a fundraising pitch to the public, and also the negative reviews. The main negative review was written in a journal called EMBO Reports, and over 20 gerontologists signed on to it. They opened up with a quote from H.L. Mencken that says, "For every complex problem, there is a simple solution, and it is wrong." This is basically how they felt about all of his work. They feel that it is so wrong it doesn't even deserve scientific debate. However, on the positive side, The magazine MIT Technology Review in 2005 started the SENS Challenge, which is a $20,000 prize to anyone who can logically prove that SENS is so wrong that it should not be debated. And few have tried, and no one has succeeded as of yet. So overall, I felt the book was well written, with easy-to-follow transitions and a good logical train of argument throughout. His writing style is very lively and often witty, as that quote. I like that quote as an example, and it made reading the book relatively interesting for me. Granted, I am a biology student. With that said, I feel that the language is far too technical for the target audience, which is the educated layperson. Anyone without a strong biology background would have trouble keeping interest throughout this book. So overall, the book is thought-provoking for sure, but I feel it ultimately fails in its objective to convince people that ending aging is what we should be doing, that it's even feasible within the near future, and that you should be funding it.